Hello friends, Nathan here. Welcome to the third and final race of the Vancouver Island Karting Association's Winter Championship at VIMC. And shockingly, it's another wet one, though some blue sky does appear to be peeking through at the moment. So you may recall I managed 4th place in both of the previous races, so maybe if I'm lucky I can get a podium this time. And we've also got a new layout for today, as you'll see with the new chicane just coming up at the end of the main straight here. I'll admit right off the bat that that thing was freaking me out in the wet because I very much did not want to understeer into that second barrier and mess up my kart and possibly myself. So that's probably going to affect my pace a bit in this qualifying session, but let's see what we can do. Now, as always, the goal for qualifying is going to ideally be to get together with a few people at my pace or slightly quicker and just try to put some laps together with a good draft. I let Ben in the 46 there get by me fairly easily in the corner at the top of the hill, which I almost still called corner 1, and I'm sure I will make that mistake later on in the video. Anyway, Ben was on at least my pace in practice, and I think I've got Chris right behind me, so this could be a fairly good setup if we can just close it up a little bit as we come around the final chicane here and set up for the first flying lap. We do appear to be a bit faster than the two karts in front right now, so we may have to try and make our way by them, or potentially just push them along in a big train. I'm going to essentially follow Ben's lead here, hopefully. Now, the first question will be whether I can take this first chicane without chickening out too much, but actually they're all slowing up even earlier than I was expecting, so I had to back off quite a bit there. This is not going to be a super fast lap as a result, so maybe we do need to try to get... Oh, no! And that essentially recreates what happened at the time. I was thinking about what had just happened and what was coming ahead, and not so much thinking about where I was going, and got really lucky there to save that and not even really lose any time. But as I was saying, and that makes it even more true, this is not going to be the lap, so it's going to be more about getting some decent position here to set up the next one. Or at least that was the plan. As you can see in a moment here, it all goes very poorly. So Ben gets a good run on the two karts ahead, as do I. They're actually 3 wide now. The one on the left is going the fastest, so I'm going to try and follow him, but now Megan's coming... Oh! Okay, let me go back for a minute here. Okay, so as I come around this corner, I see them go 3 wide, and I'm screaming up on them very quickly. So I need to pick a lane here, and I decide to commit to the left, because he appears to be going a bit faster than the other two. Now, 3 things are about to happen almost simultaneously. I notice that Megan is veering over to the left to slot in behind 111, so I swerve right to try and go around the other side of her. But at exactly the same time I start to do that, I get a bump from Chris behind, which sends me right into Megan and sends her, as she put it, down Splash Mountain. At least we got an epic thumbnail out of it, I guess, which, by the way, I did run by her before using. But more on that later, because the fun isn't over yet. These guys are going to go side by side right here. I'm going to check up a little bit to try and avoid them, and oh, okay. Well, that lap was already shot, I guess. But we can't really get going now because the field's still pretty clumped up, so we're going to have to wait for them to all go by. While we do that, I guess I'll just say I don't think that was really any of our fault. It was just really bad luck / timing. I mean, Megan going over to the left to follow the guy who went by totally makes sense. That's what anybody would do. I wasn't expecting it, but I still would have had enough time to go around if I hadn't got that tap from behind at exactly that same time. But I don't blame Chris either, because tapping somebody there down the straight is a totally normal thing to do, and he definitely didn't have time to react to our move. Yeah, in hindsight, maybe could have anticipated better, but I'm going to try not to be too hard on myself there. Though I do feel bad about the outcome. Anyway, in theory, we still need to put a qualifying lap together here, and it looks like I'm going to be doing it by myself. This one's already kind of shot from the spin at the end of the previous, so I'm going to have one more in theory. But in reality, I'm not even going to have that, because in a moment here, I'm going to come around a corner and see that the session's red flagged. I don't know if this is because of that same incident or if something else happened, but the upshot is we are done. So, fortunately for me at least, with this layout, you do cross the start-finish line at the beginning of the outlap, so that lap does count. You know, it wasn't a particularly fast lap, but it was something good enough for, I believe, 12th place, which is actually a lot better than the last place that I was expecting, so I will take it. And it actually turned out even better than that. Here we are in the pre-final, and one person near the front got disqualified, I guess, which moves me up from 12th to 11th and over to the inside row. And then one of the guys in the inside row ahead of me didn't get into the grid in time, which moves me up a place on the inside, so effectively 9th to start. Still not where I'd like to be, but a heck of a lot better than 12th, and much better than back of the grid, so I will take that too. Now, the way this race is supposed to work is that we're going to skip the chicane for the first lap just to avoid carnage, because it's basically impossible to go too wide through there. So the first effective corner will be at the top of the hill on lap 1. Nice to be on the inside for that. And then for the rest of the race, we'll take the chicane normally. And here we go. Green flag. I didn't get the best start, but it's not terrible. Looks like whoever's beside me didn't get a great start either, because I've got a gap over there, but I'm going to stick to the inside here, get by 1, maybe 2, and that's not bad at all. Now, you may have noticed that I was having some technical difficulties with the rear camera in this race. Fortunately, through the magic of video editing, I am able to faithfully reproduce the rear camera view through basically the entire race from this point. Seriously, it's not far from the truth. Actually, maybe what I'll try to do is look at the data and throw one of those clips in every time I actually do get a bump from Chris through this race. There are more than a few. In fact, I think one is going to be coming up right there, and that's going to help me sail by number 11 there. So things are going pretty well so far. I'm not feeling super confident in the kart. It feels quite twitchy, but we're managing to keep up with the leaders here. Oh, and I think seeing 46 go wide there jogged my memory on how I managed to get upgraded to 9th place. I think somebody went off there in the formation lap. Anyway, something else is about to happen here, I think. Yep. Oof. I was very lucky not to get a bunch of cones in the face or worse there. I guess I did get a position out of it, but it's also gapped me from the leaders, and I had to back off quite a bit to avoid going into all that. Also seem to have picked up a piece of dirt on my camera, so hopefully that'll blow away soon. So I think that leaves us in 6th place now. We've got Chris, Grayson, and Kalis up front, and then Mitchell and Ben in front of us here. Yeah, you can see all 5 of them there. And then a bit of a gap, so we really got to close that if we can. Unfortunately, I'm still feeling, yeah, you can see me making those little corrections. I am not feeling super confident in... Looks like Chris has managed to use my draft to catch up over that lap. What was I saying? Not feeling super confident in the feel of the kart right now. It's quite twitchy. I actually discovered after the race that my camber appeared to have slipped on both sides. I was running a ton of negative camber, so that might have contributed to that. Would help with turn in, but potentially make it a bit twitchier in the rear. The other thing that was not helping me this race is I was being a complete chicken with this new chicane, especially after seeing Todd go flying through the grass there. You can see his tire marks. I really didn't want to do that, and I especially didn't want to go flying into the barrier and bend another steering rod or whatever. So I knew I was taking it a little bit cautiously through there, but I was really going much slower than I needed to, and fortunately discovered that later on. You can see me just fighting for grip around that corner. Actually felt lucky to not end up needing a bunch of counter steer just to keep it pointing in the right direction there. And there's the bump. I was not surprised to feel that one, because I definitely lost a ton of time scrubbing sideways around that corner. And of course, even with 2 karts on the same pace, the guy behind is going to have the... there he is again. The guy behind is going to have the draft, so is going to be able to catch up and most of the time give some of those bumps. In this race, I don't really think we're on the same pace. I think Chris did have a little bit of a pace advantage on me, but not so much that, or at least he felt not so much that he would have been better off in clear air. Still better in my draft and using that to push us both along. Now the hope, of course, is that doing that, we can close the gap to these 2 in front, who are also definitely working together at this point. If they were to start fighting, that would certainly help, but even without that, we are keeping pace with them. The gap doesn't appear to be getting bigger over the last lap or so. They did space it out a little bit earlier, but as I'm kind of settling into a groove here, we're doing a bit better, but we just need to actually close the gap, which is a slightly taller order, especially since I'm struggling around there every time. But fortunately getting bailed out, at least so far. Alright, let's see if we can do this one, but nope. Nope, we can't. I expect we're going to get another tap any moment. There it is. And yeah, he's just basically shoving me all the way down the straights at this point. So I've really got to get it together, because if I have any bigger moment than those, he will certainly be expected to go by. Getting a good run onto the main straight at least, which is the most important, so that's something. Still going way slower than you can hear me slowing down considerably more than I need to be there, so definitely needed to work on that. And I think this corner too, I was taking cleanly, but was also taking much slower than I could have been. But, you know, it's understandable since I'm losing the rear all over the place that I just didn't have a lot of confidence. Although those were honestly helping, not just in the raw pace, but also whenever I got one that early in a straight, I knew that I really should have been taking that corner faster. Not quite as good as when you can actually follow somebody and see where they're gapping you, but it certainly does still help to have that little bit of feedback. And of course it doesn't hurt to get literally pushed around too. That does help the lap times too. See, coming around here, have we managed to close this gap up at all? Don't think so. It really looks almost identical. So let's fast forward a few laps here and see what we can do about that. Now, I suppose you might have reason to suspect that I just copied the same clip 3 times in a row there. But no, seriously, those were 3 different laps, and we are even gaining on them. Just, we'll need about 47 more laps to close the gap at this pace. And seriously, everywhere I've put that bump clip has been at a real bump. So the clips are fake, but the tabs are real. Except for those last 3. Those were indeed for comedic effect. Although actually, I think there was one more right after that I missed. Anyway, I believe we are now on the penultimate lap, and some things are actually going to happen here. First of all, I'm going to wash wide on this corner like I usually do, and we're going to actually get to see Chris there, proof that he is indeed behind me, or was, beside me now. Hopefully behind me again in a moment. Okay. Now, is he going to stick there? I'm not going to go defensive or anything here, because, okay, I guess he's going to help me still. If he did want to dive in the inside here, that'd be fine. I'd just stay behind him. The only thing I really want to make sure I avoid is him flying by somewhere and gapping me immediately. I want to stick with him, and then I'm happy to bump him for a while and potentially learn some things about where I'm slow. But there's the white flag, which does change things a little bit, because ideally I would like to finish in this position, not one behind. Now we're coming up on a lapped kart here, which is really not what I want to see on the white flag lap with another guy faster than me on my tail. Oh, and especially at this part of the track where it's very difficult to pass. I'm going to have to let up here, because otherwise I'm going to go into them right on the corner. Okay, he's helping me through here. That's probably good, but I'm taking a shallow line at this. Oh, that scrubbed a lot of speed. Okay, that was not surprising to see. All right, at least I'm sticking with him. I'm actually getting a good run around this corner as long as I don't lose the rear, and I actually held on to it quite well there. And look at that draft, it can help me too. So I gotta pay him back for those 47 bumps through the race, but I am still gonna take this position too. And there we go. So job done as long as I don't screw up this last corner, and I think that might be just good enough. And I didn't actually realize it, but he was actually about 3/4 the way up alongside me when we crossed the line there. So very, very close, but managed to hold on. And yeah, after qualifying 12th, I will take that 6th place happily. And thanks to another DQ, I guess I got lucky with getting to start on the inside row once again. So actually starting the final here in 5th place. Now, this one's going to work exactly the same as the pre-final. We're all going to skip that chicane on the first lap, which is especially good now because it has really started to rain and the visibility is quite poor out there. Actually, I won't subject you to the whole race this way, but why don't we watch the first lap from my perspective? So yeah, visibility not great. Especially going through that chicane when you're basically guessing where the two barriers are is not super fun, but it is kind of exciting, I guess. Anyway, that first lap, yeah, it could have gone better. I had to catch a big slide into this left-hander coming up again here. Hopefully it doesn't happen this time, I don't recall. No, that was better. Also another one in the chicane at the end of the lap where I've actually been fairly strong most of the day, but not on that first lap. So yeah, lost one spot to Chris, gapped the karts behind, and really now I'm just fighting to stay in touch with them because he's starting to pick up a draft from, I think it's Mitchell ahead of him. And if I lose touch with them here, I'm basically going to be in no man's land either for the whole race if I'm lucky, or until a pack from behind me catches me up. So I did manage to take that better that time and definitely closed up a bit, so I'm probably getting a slight draft off them now, but it's really touch and go here, so I really need to... Oh, but there's a red flag. Well, I guess that's going to close us back up, so there's that. This is probably lucky for me. I was saying after the race that I think there's like a 50-50 chance at best that I was going to close back up with the guys in front. So this will get me there. Of course, it will have me under fire again from the karts behind, and it'll mean getting to do another start with all the spray and blindness. So that's going to be fun.
Get out, stay here. You cannot work on the cart. We're not going to be long.
Right. So the plan is we're going to go single file for the restart, and we are going to take the chicane, which means the spray is going to be even more ridiculous. I won't subject you to the helmet cam this time because you literally won't be able to see anything. But yeah, suffice to say, I was just basically trying to follow the spray in front of me as best as possible. And here we go. Even the GoPro can barely see. Oh, Grayson's taking the escape route there, probably because he couldn't see, which means he has to actually come to a full stop up over there, which sucks because he had huge pace. But anyway, that gets us up to 5th place, I guess. But we're losing touch with Chris again, putting a decent gap to the karts behind again. But if I can't close this up, I really don't want to get stuck in no man's land. Okay, let's not lose it on this corner. It could have been better, but it wasn't awful. Still got a chance here, right on the edge. Okay, come on. Competent corners. Which is just barely what I'm getting repeatedly. Still think I've got a tiny bit of draft here. Now, I have been doing well in this final chicane most of the time, so let's close up a bit of the gap here. Right. He washed a bit wide on the left part there. I got an okay last corner. Yeah, I am a little bit closer here. So hopefully getting a bit more draft down this straight. And I've got to be a bit braver through the chicane, so how can we do there? Okay, yeah, I actually gained some ground through there, so this is good. A little bit more like that, one more lap, and maybe we can close this gap. Ooh, especially if he's sliding around like that. Maybe we can close it right now. Okay, we can't really... Now, in the dry, we'd happily push there at the top of the corkscrew, but in these conditions, I don't want to give him a tap when he's potentially not gripped up and going to go flying. And I also, I think, took it a little bit conservative into that corner for the same reason. I don't want him to get a wiggle mid-corner and end up on top of him. Unfortunately, that resulted in a big gap here, so I'm going to have to close that back up again, which we'll do here. Now, can I get enough? No, he got a better run out of that corner than me, so I don't think I can get enough of a draft here to give him a bump. Definitely not. But this is always where I'm doing best, so let's try and do best. Whoa. Alright. And a decent exit, but again, not quite enough where I'm going to be able to tap him before it's, well, no, I'm not going to be able at all. The camera lens is like filling with water there. Again, imagine what my view from the helmet is like. I would show you for a moment, but that battery has died, so I actually can't. Fortunately, the important one is still going here. So, really, it's just the two of us again, kind of like the pre-final, just swapped the other way around. And unfortunately, so far, I'm not being quite as helpful as Chris had been. That took pretty well, but again, I'm getting like a better entrance into a lot of the corners, but he's getting a better exit, so it's tough for me to bump on the straights. Yeah, a lot of places like that, like I'm having to back off a little bit going into the corner because I don't want to go into him at the worst possible time, but then because of that, he's getting a better exit and I'm not able to bump, so we're really basically doing his clear air pace right now. I'm getting a better run through here, but I think I'm being a bit too timid on the exit there. I don't know if it's the same thing that I was worried about going into him if he took it slower than expected, but as a result, I'm losing touch down the straight here, and again, not being able to help. Took the chicane there at least as quickly as he was. I think I'm still leaving probably too much margin there, but doing a lot better than the pre-final, and a lot better on the old quarter one there as well, so that's an improvement at least. Like so much better that looking at the data, even though the conditions are far worse in this race, I was actually taking both of those corners faster, which is ridiculous. All the rest, I was much faster in the pre-final on the drying track. So that shows just how timid I was being in that earlier session. Or phrased more positively, just how awesomely I'm driving now, comparatively speaking. I say as I twice have to counter steer around that corner. Anyway, bit of a gap here ahead again, so let's hope that I take this sequence as well as I have been most of the time and close that up a little bit. Probably too far to have any chance of a bump down the main straight here, but at least I can use that draft to completely close up and then hopefully do something in the rest of this lap. That was alright. I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with that, trusting the kart a bit more to turn in. I think that's the main thing that was getting in my head, is just in the wet, you sometimes have these circumstances where you try to turn and it just doesn't want to and goes straight. And I'm thinking, like, if that happens there when you have a margin of inches or less on either side, you're going into that barrier and that doesn't seem fun. But, I mean, one thing that I wasn't really thinking about is that that does tend to happen more when you're trying to turn a lot. When you're just doing a little back and forth like that, it's less likely to severely understeer. Oh. A little bit of a sniff there, but I didn't really want to try and pull up alongside him there. That would just compromise both of our lines. And unfortunately, it still compromised me enough that, again, I was all over him, but in the wrong place. Speaking of... Oh, that was so close. He kind of hopped over that curb, lost all his momentum, and I'm completely loaded up. So in order to slow down, to not smash right into him, I basically had to straight line that corner a little bit and took out a couple of cones. Fortunately got away with it, although lost touch with him a little bit, but I think I can probably close back up. I was just lucky to be alive at this point, or happy to be, I should say. You know, actually thinking about it now, I think both that incident and the thing I was talking about before, where I was having to back off mid-corner to avoid going into him, really stem from the same thing. Because I would be gapped behind him on the straights, catching up through the straights, and then I'd try to turn in and lift or brake at my usual spot, which would mean I'd be catching him too quickly in the corner. You know, I'd have to back off, so I'd lose all my momentum and have a poor exit out of the corner, and rinse and repeat for the next one. What I really should have been doing was backing off a little bit earlier on the straight to give myself a little bit of margin so that I could take the corner normally and focus on just having high minimum speed and a good exit speed, and then I'd be much more likely to be able to give taps down the straight and more likely to avoid sketchy incidents like that one. Now, of course, it is a judgment thing. You want to be catching up enough so that you're right back on them once you get out of the corner. So it's still possible if they have a moment like that, it's going to catch you unaware. But still, I think I would have been a lot better off doing it that way. But these are all good thoughts to file away for next time. For now, got to stick with Chris. I mean, we're not going to be catching the guys in front, but unless they take each other out, which is always possible. But if I can stick with him, at least 4th place is in the cards potentially. And the other thing is, we really need to be keeping up the pace as much as possible because there are still some very fast drivers behind us. One in particular. Oh, There he goes. Now, at the time there, I was actually thinking, did he just want to go behind me for a while and see what I'm doing? Because it felt like he just kind of drove around the outside of the corner there. But, by the way, if you're paying attention, you might recognize that little clip in the rear camera that occurred down the straight there. Anyway, turns out he actually just had a massive understeer through there, and so the positions were swapped. Now, I wasn't able to push him at all, so I am wondering how I'm going to do staying in front here. I knew that I was usually taking that last chicane pretty well, so I figured I'd be able to stay ahead through the front straight, and indeed I was. But he is closing up pretty quickly here, and stayed with me right through one, not gaining a ton, but he's fully in my draft, so he's definitely going to be on me and going to have a chance. And of course, this is the white flag lap, so I would really like to stay... would really like to stay ahead, I was going to say, but would really like to stay alive too, and just barely manage that. Guess that was the first time that he'd followed me through there that session, and didn't realize I was going to brake a little bit earlier than him. Now, I'm going to have a big slide through here, and I know he's right behind me, so I'm going to go right over to the right and take a defensive line here. And if he's going to pass me, he's going to have to do it the hard way. You'll also notice Grayson flying up behind us now with way more pace than either one of us, but I think I'm just gonna hold on, and looks like Chris is too. And what a fun race. I mean, I would love to be battling for first place rather than fourth, but still, having someone who's right close to your pace just makes it so much fun. And every session I definitely feel like I'm learning, so, you know, maybe I will be challenging for those podiums soon. As it is, that is my fourth place in a row in the Winter Series, and there was a nice surprise afterward, because it turns out consistency does count for something, as thanks to some better drivers' DNFs and the other Chris playing Verstappen to my Perez and taking all the points available, I was able to convert those 3/4 into a second in the championship. So I was able to stand on the podium after all, albeit in a rather dirty rain suit. And of course, as always, the most important thing is that I had an absolute blast, and I cannot wait for next time. Maybe it'll actually be sunny then. So I hope to see you there. Until then.
Sorry, get out of your way.
Why couldn't you get out of my way on the race? That would have been better. I imagine
I wouldn't have taken
you wouldn't take the place by pushing me, and then, yeah.
No, I wouldn't have taken it like that. But I didn't have to, because my lifting was enough for you. And it didn't seem like it cost you that much, really.
Just almost dead.
Yeah.